each and every one of us. And so I just want to encourage you today to enjoy today. I told you today is a time to bring your childlike attitudes, all right? That's why I wore the fancy coat today, to make sure you're in the mood and you're ready to go today. And this is one of my favorite Christmas stories that we do. It's called the Christmas Photo, and I'm going to give some credit. It's been such a busy week for me, and Kim has been just a tremendous help getting everything ready. But we're going to be doing a lot of pictures up here. The Christmas Photo is actually a children's book that I wrote a long time ago, and we have lost all the pictures to it, so we had to recreate all of those, and Kim was a humongous help in getting those recreated this week. So if she has carpal tunnel because she was taking care of all these pictures, you can understand why. And so I want you to enjoy this Christmas story with us, and I want you to have a good time, and let's tell the story about the Christmas Photo. But it's getting our focus right during the most festive time of the year. So Bill looked at the new bike. It was shiny, and it came with a matching helmet. Where am I going to get $100? Bill worked hard at stuffing things, selling paint and hammers and pillows and dog food, and every day he would walk past the bike, and he would dream about riding it down the street with a pack of dogs following him. But he always had to say, where am I going to get $100? He thought about working out really hard for a couple of weeks so he could become a professional football player. Man, that really made him tired. And he thought about reading some really big books so he could become a lawyer. But just thinking about it made his head hurt. And he finally thought maybe if he could find some rich person's lost dog, he'd get a reward. But the only dogs he was able to find weren't very rich. If only Bill could find a way to get $100. Bill said to himself, but who would give Bill $100? It wasn't like people just handed out $100 money prizes. Look, it's a $100 money prize, a lady with a child hollered out to a passing businessman. Turning his head, Bill saw a poster in the greeting card section. The best Christmas picture would win a prize big enough for him to buy that bike. But what kind of Christmas picture would be good enough to win $100? I mean, the downtown Christmas tree was beautiful this time of year, but everyone was taking pictures of it. There was the old sled hill that he used to play on, but someone recently built condominiums on that hill. What would make a good picture? The church always did a live nativity that was set up. Maybe he could take a picture of it. Wait a second, Bill thought. I've got a better idea. Bill returned to his room to gather up his camera. He lived in the basement of his parents' house where he liked to watch the Star Wars quintilogy and chat with his friends online. And in his spare time, he would tinker with his inventions, including a working time machine that he will build out of returns to stuffing things in 10 years, then travel back in time and give it to himself as a birthday present a couple months ago. On the corner of his desk, Bill picked up his Bible. I'm going to need this as a reference. And when I finish taking a picture of the real first Christmas, I'm sure to win the $100 prize. The machine whirled and buzzed, and shocks of electricity jumped wildly over his head. Then everything changed. As Bill looked through the foggy glass of his time machine, he could make out the rows and rows of wavy wheat. Bill remembered reading that this area of Israel was so well known for its bread that people began calling it the town of bread, the house of bread. The gentle hills were dotted with the occasional sheep pen or small house. And then he saw the valley next to the small stream underneath the star-filled sky. It was Bethlehem. It was larger than he expected it to be. But there must have been hundreds of buildings, some small and others quite large, and everything was covered in sand. It was late at night when Bill arrived. Still, the town was crowded and noisy, and animals were tied up in the street. Families huddled in corners, and everywhere you looked, there were signs of people on the move. Vendors were selling birds, sheep, fruit, clothes, spices, and even more. A young guard in dull armor stood at the end of one long street. Is it always this crowded, Bill asked the soldier. It's usually worse, said the soldier. Most everyone has gone in to sleep. If you're looking for a place to stay, you're too late. There's a camp up on the hill. I hear one of the innkeepers has moved out some furniture so people can sleep on the floors. Bill wasn't looking for a place to stay the night, but he was looking for an inn. Near the edge of town, Bill did find this one inn with tables and shelves that had been moved into the streets, and worn-out travelers sat around the tables as the salty innkeeper bellowed to all walking past, "There's no more room in any inn. I can find you a place for the night. Why, I had a young man who agreed to clean out my stable for him and his pregnant wife to stay in." Bill smiled and went around the back of the inn to find a lot covered with camels and donkeys and horses. A servant watched the animals. The young man arranged the stable to make it more accommodating for the night. "Let me help," said Bill. Together he and Joseph mucked the stalls and threw hay on the floor to cover the mud. He pushed out the frequent sheep that wandered in to munch on the slop in the old feeding trough. The stable was old and dirty. It smelled of wet sheep and horse and hay. Two other families had crowded into the other stalls for the night when the time came. Joseph jumped to his feet and began to pace. "What do I do?" A mother of 5 camped in the stall next to Mary, and Joseph woke and came to Mary's aid. There were tears and screams and hugs of encouragement, and that night there was a baby. He was wrinkled and tiny, really, really loud. Joseph pulled out a swaddling cloth, and they brought all the way from Nazareth and wrapped the child up. Mary said his name is Jesus. And though her hair was messy and her face was dirty, she held her son tightly until she could no longer stay awake. And Joseph took Jesus and laid him in the manger that he and Bill had just cleaned out. Then with a click, Bill took a picture. Mary, however, did not get long to sleep that night. At the opening of the stable, a group of ragged shepherds arrived, and their faces were covered with bristly whiskers, and their clothes were worn and dirty and torn and patched. And though they were out of breath, they could not stop speaking to one another, to any they saw in the streets about the terrifying and wonderful thing that just happened to them on the hill. One spoke clearly. "There was this angel, and the angel said, 'Do not be afraid. I am here to announce a great and joyful event that is meant for everybody worldwide. A Savior has just been born in David's town. A Savior who is Messiah and Master. And this is what you're looking for. A baby wrapped in a blanket and lying in a manger.'" Is that the baby? May we see him? When they saw him, the shepherds began shouting and dancing and running into the streets to tell everyone their story. And Mary did not scold them for making such a fuss. She just sat and watched and smiled. And Bill took another picture. With all the hustle and to-do that the shepherds were making, the new arrivals of a group of men went unnoticed, but it did not take long for the word to get into the stable. "Strange men from a distant land have come to see the baby," cried out one of the shepherds. Bill rushed to see these men. It was the wise men, and they were dressed in strange clothes, but carried in their hands small but precious gifts. Their presents they presented them were gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And to Mary, as they told their story, we asked around, "Where can we find and pay homage to the newborn King of the Jews? We observed a star in the eastern sky that signified his birth. We're on a pilgrimage to worship him. And after much traveling, we have come here to Bethlehem, following the star that you can see clearly and vividly in the sky that shines directly above you." Bill said, "This is it. Everyone come into the stable." It was crowded. There were 3 or 4 families, the shepherds, the wise men, and their servants, and many of the animals had wandered back in. Joseph worked to keep the oil in the lamps. The young boys pushed through the legs to have a chance to touch the child. The old woman said, "I've had 5 children of my own, so I knew just what to do." Bill tried to get everyone to stand still. Could you look here for a minute? No, don't stand in front of me. Try to smile a little. Now, I can't see the baby. He took one picture after another. Maybe one of these would be good enough for him to win the $100 cash prize. Bill finally stepped outside to look through his pictures, and they were all dull and dirty and just not very Christmassy. How could he possibly win the cash prize when none of his pictures looked like a holiday at all? The solution is simple. I've got a time machine. Bill said to himself. I'll just go back home and get a few things to help make this picture really first rate. I mean, nothing too much, of course. I want the picture to be as authentic as possible. So Bill returned to his home to gather a few things. He knew he'd need some lights. The pictures were all way too dull. And a new clean blanket. That would only be right to wrap up the baby Jesus. Nothing big, but if he went back earlier, he could paint up the stable just a little so that it wouldn't be so drab. So Bill filled up the time machine and added a few extras just in case and returned to Bethlehem. This may take longer than I thought. I better go back home and get something to eat. And so he did. And while he was there, he grabbed a few more boxes and more boxes and more boxes. Bill wanted everything to be perfect. He landed his time machine on a hill just outside of town several hours before Jesus was born, and around him were shepherds. "Do not be afraid," Bill said. "I bring you good news. A great joy baby is going to be born in Bethlehem." And the shepherds looked stunned and afraid. "He will be the Christ, but you all are way too dirty to see him. So here's good news. I have shampoo and moisturizing body wash, plus an electric razor." And Bill led the shepherds down the hill so that he might clean them up and dress them in clean clothes. As they walked away, angels appeared on the hillside and sang to a field filled only with sheep. As Bill finished with the shepherds, he immediately rushed away. Something has to be done about the wise men. The large caravan of camels and servants preceded the scholars on the road to Bethlehem. "Wise men from the east," called out Bill, "you bring gifts to the newborn King of the Jews, but your gifts are so small, so I have brought you large boxes and foam packing peanuts and wrapping paper." The wise men had never seen such strange and exotic items. "Surely, stranger, you bring something new to us. And though as learned as we are, show us these packing peanuts that you speak of." And with a song in his heart, Bill began showing the wise men the wonders of cellophane tape, singing Christmas cards, and warm winter scarves. "Mary, did you know that your baby boy should always sleep on 100 thread count sheets?" said Bill. "And I know you just had a baby, but seriously, it looks like you just wrestled a crocodile in the swamp. Come with me." And Bill led Mary out behind the inn, where he set up a small dressing station, complete with makeup, hair products, vanity, accessories, perfumes, fashion magazines, and a lighted camel dressed like a reindeer. "This is nothing like what the angel Gabriel described to me," Mary said. "No? Well, trust me, this is what people want to see. One little picture and we'll remind everyone what Christmas really is supposed to be about. Now here, put on these sunglasses." Click. Bill took his pictures. Of course, he made a few changes to the stable. "I'm only going to add things to make the photo more like Christmas without ruining the authenticity. Things like an evergreen. What is Christmas without a tree?" Bill then added some lights on the tree for all the kids and a large star. "That's biblical," he stated. Next, he pushed out most of the shepherds. "You just don't look the part." A brawny sheep herder and a tall, handsome assistant were allowed to remain. "You are all beautiful, and just think, we're helping Christmas be more wonderous for years to come." With that, Bill wheeled in a dozen boxes filled with festive lights, inflatable lawn art, and a small gas-powered generator. Bill returned home with a smile on his face and a picture in his application packet. He was certain that his Christmas photo would be the winner. How could it not? It's a real-life picture of the very first Christmas. Bill's thoughts went back to the shiny red bicycle and stuffing things. Bill was going to get all he wanted this Christmas. It was certainly going to be a season to celebrate. A season of lights and songs and candy. Bill straightened his Santa hat and headed to the store. The judging of the photo contest would start soon, and he didn't want to be late. As Bill walked down the street, though, he noticed that things didn't seem quite right. A passerby with her face nearly completely covered with a scarf waved. "Have a clean Christmas! Would you like a squirt of hand sanitizer?" Bill stuck out his hand. "Where's your scarf?" another person yelled. "How can you celebrate Christmas without a scarf?" Bill just shrugged his shoulders. "Don't mess with him," said a child. "He's just a grump. He hasn't even done his hair up. What's wrong, mister? Don't you love the great joy baby Jesus enough to fix up your hair? Just stay home, you Grinch." What was going on? Everyone was acting so weird, and the closer he got to stuffing things, the worse it got. There were boxes the size of cars lining the outside of the store with large signs, "Be a wise man and get a humongous box for all your biggest loaves." Inside was no better. The store was covered with little foam peanuts. They were piled in the corner and on top of the racks and even falling from the ceilings. "Hey, young man, where's your Christmas spirit?" The store's Christmas master stood at a sunglass booth. "Let me tell you the story that happened 2,000 years ago in a little town of Bethlehem. Shepherds on a hill were told of a great joy baby that would be born, and on that night they were given new clothes and fancy hairdos and scarves so that they might worship the child. And today, wise men still seek hair products that will honor him." And Bill pulled off his hat and hung his head low, and he ran out of the store. Things have to be made right. I ruined Christmas. Bill jumped back into his time machine, and in a flash, he was back in Bethlehem. Could he save Christmas? He wasn't sure. But he did not like what it had become. It had gone from being a time of love, peace, and joy to a time of self-centered, image-driven egocentrism. Then it began to happen. The moment Bill had been waiting for. The sky filled with a million colors as bright lights filled the evening sky, and bam! There in front of Bill was a time machine. It was clean and shiny, and out of its door stepped a Bill, who was very surprised to see himself waiting for him. "I want to show you the photo that you're about to take," said Bill. "Looks great," said the other. "Not really. It's out of focus. Because of this photo, the whole world will think that Christmas should focus on them, on their looks, on their wants. You cannot take this picture." The two Bills talked and talked, and eventually they agreed. Bill returned home without taking his picture, leaving the older Bill alone on the side of the hill. He sat and watched as a star beamed its light down on the little stable. On a far hill, he could see the glow of angels, and he knew they were singing to the shepherds. Then he looked down to that little town he could see. Mary and Joseph, and in an old dirty manger there was a baby. What was wrong with the focus of this Christmas photo? It was not focused on the baby. This entire time, Bill finally realized that he had been focusing on himself and his desires. On a hill one silent night, down in a little town called Bethlehem, Bill finally realized where he should have had his focus all along. "Bill, I bring you glad tidings of great joy." There was a voice like an angel behind him. "For unto you is born today in the city of David a Savior who is Christ the King." Bill trembled as he turned to face the angel. "I'm sorry for the problems I've caused. I messed up." The angel was silent for a long while. It is a happy Christmas when people realize they are not perfect, but that Jesus is. In that house is the Christ child, and every person he meets will cause problems and will mess up. But focus on him. Turn to him. Trust in him, and all will be forgiven. There's a Bible verse in Isaiah chapter 40 that talks about the coming of Christ. It comes at a time when Israel is struggling so mightily. They have messed up many times, and because they've messed up so many times, they are now doomed to destruction. They can see it in the horizon that they're one day going to be wiped out. But in the midst of all of that, God comes to comfort his people. And he comforts his people, reminding him that a day is going to come when a Savior will arrive. Isaiah 40 says, "Comfort, O comfort my people, says your God. Speak softly and tenderly to Jerusalem, but also make it very clear that she has served her sentence, that her sin is taken care of, forgiven. She's been punished enough and more than enough, and now it's over and done with. Thunder in the desert, prepare for God's arrival. Make the road straight and smooth, the highway fit for our God. Fill the valleys, level off the hills, smooth out the ruts, clear out the rocks. Then God's bright glory will shine, and everyone will see it. Yes, just as God has said." The voice said, "Shout," I said. "What shall I shout? These people are nothing but grass, their love fragile as wildflowers. The grass withers, the wildflowers fade. If God so much as puffs on them, Aren't these people just so much grass? True, the grass withers and the wildflower fades, but our God's word stands firm and forever. Climb a high mountain, Zion. You're the preacher of good news. Raise your voice. Make it good and loud, Jerusalem. You're the preacher of good news. Speak loud and clear. Don't be timid. Tell the cities of Judah, look, your God. Look at him. God the Master comes in power, ready to go into action. He's going to pay back his enemies and reward those who have loved him. Like a shepherd, he will care for his flock, gathering the lambs in his arms, hugging them as he carries, leading the nursing ewes to good pastures. It reminds us that even though each and every one of us probably this year can say, I've made a mistake, I've messed up something. I've had a problem. Maybe not so tragic as destroying all of Christmas because of the time machine, but something in our lives. And it's so refreshing to know that the whole point of Christ being born was that God knew that we would mess up. And he wanted to provide a salvation for you and a salvation for me. He wanted to provide hope for you and hope for me. He wanted to provide a new life for you and a new life for me. And so this Christmas season, my encouragement to you is that we make sure that our focus is on Christ this Christmas. I love Christmas. I love dressing up in funny suits and putting lights all over the place. I love all that stuff. And Christmas villages are nowhere in the Bible, but I love decorating our house with them every year. We do stuff like that. That stuff is great. I love that stuff. But to always remember that on top of everything else, it's a story about the Son of God being born into this earth, giving up all of that glory, all of that divinity, so that he might be one of us and live a perfect life for you and for me. Let's make sure this season that we keep that focus, that we know that that's part of all the celebrations that we do. And so in all the fun things and all the other stuff that happens, that Jesus Christ remains our focus. Would you all pray with me? All right. God, we thank you so much for allowing us to have just such a festive time in this Christmas season, for us to be able to celebrate you, knowing that you are a reason, Lord, to have the biggest celebration all year long, Lord, where we take up an entire month just singing songs to you and decorating our houses and doing as many fun things as we can. God, we are so grateful that you have given us a reason to celebrate. But Lord, in all of our celebrations, let us never lose our focus on you and on who you are, on how you have changed our lives, Lord, how you have made us whole. God, we thank you so much for that child in the manger. And God, for all of us here today, Lord, I pray that we would be bold enough to look at our own lives and say, today, this month, this year, I've had some failings. But just like in the story when the angel said, you couldn't mess up Christmas. Because Christmas is about God coming to earth. Emmanuel, God with us. And that the whole point of God with us is that every problem, every pain, every misstep that we've ever made can be made right